She rose quickly, slipping into her environmental suit designed to accommodate her taller frame, and the iridescent scales that covered her blue skin, where humans had hair. She had sensitive tendrils that detected changes in air pressure, temperature, and emotional states, a useful trait for a diplomatic officer. The station shuddered violently, throwing her against the wall. The humans called these tremors earthquakes, but in space they indicated something far more dangerous. Emergency lights flickered, unbathing everything in an eerie red glow. Kira pressed her hand against the door sensor, but nothing happened. The power systems must be compromised. She would have to manually override. With practiced movements, she located the emergency panel and pulled hard, the door sliding open with a protesting groan. The corridor beyond was filled with smoke and the sounds of panicked voices. Some human, some belonging to the 3 other Zenturi on board. Kira, one of the human voices, called out. She recognized it as belonging to Alice, the station's science officer, a woman who had spent countless hours learning Zenturi language and customs. They had formed a friendship over late-night discussions about the differences and surprising similarities between their species. Alice appeared through the smoke, her dark hair pulled back tightly. Her face smeared with soot were under attack. She gasped. Unidentified vessels appeared from nowhere. They've damaged the main power core and communications are down. Kira felt her tendrils vibrate with alarm. Who would attack a diplomatic station? Both their governments had agreed this sector would remain neutral territory for the exchange. No time to speculate. Alice continued. We need to get to the emergency shuttles. The captain is gathering everyone at the evacuation point. Together they moved through the chaotic corridors, helping injured crew members along the way. Kira's superior strength proving useful, as she carried a wounded engineer whose leg had been crushed by a falling beam. The evacuation point was crowded with the station's 23 remaining crew members. Captain Morgan, a tall woman with stern features and graying hair, was organizing everyone into groups, her calm voice cutting through the panic. Kira, Alice. Thank goodness, the captain nodded. Seeing them approach, the emergency shuttles are prepped, but we have a problem. The attack damaged the bay doors. They need to be manually overridden from the external control room. The implications were clear. Someone would need to stay behind before anyone could speak. Lena, one of the Zenturi engineers, stepped forward, her scales rippling with determination. I can do it, she said. My environmental suit is designed for deep space vacuum. I have the best chance of survival. Captain Morgan shook her head. Too risky. Those controls are exposed to open space. Even with your suit, the radiation from the nearby star would be lethal within minutes. Then what are our options? Demanded Alice. The captain pointed to a schematic of the station. There's another way through the maintenance tunnels. They connect to the external controls through a sealed chamber. Someone could get there and open the bay doors without exposure to space, but the tunnels are narrow, designed for the maintenance drones. Everyone looked at each other. The tunnels would be too small for the taller Zenturi, but also challenging for most of the humans. I'll go. Alice volunteered. I'm small enough to fit, and I know the station's layout better than most. Kira felt a strange sensation in her chest, a protective instinct she hadn't experienced before for a member of another species. No, she said. I'm coming with you. Two have a better chance than one. The captain looked like she might argue, but another explosion rocked the station, sending everyone staggering. We don't have time to debate, she conceded. Kira, Alice, you have 15 minutes before the reactor goes critical. Everyone else to the shuttles now. The maintenance tunnel entrance was located behind a panel near the medical bay. Alice removed the cover, revealing a dark, narrow passage barely wide enough for a human to crawl through. You go first, Alice instructed. I'll guide you through the communications in our suits. Should still work even with the main systems down. Kira hesitated. Her tall frame would make the journey difficult, but she dropped to her hands and knees and began to crawl into the tunnel, her tendrils flattening against her skull to give her more clearance. The tunnel was claustrophobic even for someone used to the confines of space travel. Pipes and cables lined the walls occasionally, forcing her to turn sideways to squeeze past. The air was stale, filled with the scent of machine oil and recycled oxygen. Alice's voice came through her helmet comms clear. Despite the interference, take the next left, then continue for 20 meters until you reach a junction. They progressed slowly, the station's continuing deterioration evident in the groans of metal and occasional showers of sparks from damaged systems. Twice they had to backtrack when sections of the tunnel had collapsed. Finally, they reached a circular chamber large enough for both of them to stand a heavy airlock door marked the entrance to the external control room. Alice moved to the control panel, her fingers flying over the keys, but nothing happened. "The power's completely dead here," she said, her voice tight with frustration. Kira examined the door, noticing the manual. Override a simple mechanical wheel that would require significant strength to turn. She grasped it with both hands and began to rotate it slowly at first. Then, with increasing speed, her Zenturi muscles straining but gradually forcing the mechanism to yield. With a hiss of equalizing pressure, the door swung open, revealing the small control room beyond the external bay doors. Control panel was on the far wall, still intact. Alice rushed to it. "Let's see if the emergency power is still functioning," she murmured, connecting her tablet to the system. "There's just enough to get the doors open, but we'll need to reroute from life support." Kira nodded, understanding the implication they would have only minutes of air once the power was diverted. Working together, they rewired the system, bypassing damaged circuits and connecting emergency power cells. Alice's knowledge of the station systems complementing Kira's engineering training from the Zenturi fleet. The bay doors began to groan open a sliver, at first then wider, giving the shuttles enough clearance to escape. "We did it," Alice exclaimed, her face bright with relief. Despite the sweat beading on her brow, a crackling came over their comms. Captain Morgan's voice barely audible through the interference. "Shuttles are launching now. Get back to the evacuation point immediately." They retraced their route through the maintenance tunnels, moving faster now that they knew the way. The station's shaking had intensified alarmingly, pieces of ceiling falling around them as structural integrity failed. They emerged near the evacuation point to find Captain Morgan waiting with a single shuttle, her expression grim. "The others have launched," she explained. "I stayed to ensure everyone got out." The three of them boarded the final shuttle, Captain Morgan taking the pilot's seat, while Alice helped Kira secure herself in the human-designed crash webbing, uncomfortable for her different physiology. The engines roared to life, pushing them away from the dying station. Through the viewport, Kira watched as the place that had been her home for the past 3 months grew smaller, then with a silent flash expanded into a ball of flame and debris. In the sudden quiet that followed, Alice reached over and squeezed Kira's scaled hand, a gesture of comfort that transcended their biological differences. "We made it," she whispered. Captain Morgan's voice interrupted any response. "What's our situation with the attacking vessels?" Alice checked the sensors. Nothing on radar. They've disappeared as quickly as they came. Kira felt her tendrils twitch with suspicion. "It makes no sense to attack and then leave before confirming destruction," she said. "Unless the station wasn't the primary target," Captain Morgan replied grimly, her hands steady on the controls. The implication hung in the air between them, if not the station. Then what or who had been the target and why? Kira looked at the stars visible through the shuttles. Viewport somewhere out there were answers, and she was determined to find them, not just for herself, but for Alice, for all the humans and Zenturi who had worked to build peace between their peoples. The shuttle's communications system suddenly came to life, a message broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Shen of the Earth Defense Fleet to all survivors of Station Harmony. We are responding to your distress call. Please identify yourselves." Captain Morgan responded quickly. "This is Captain Morgan with 2 crew members from Station Harmony. We're aboard Emergency Shuttle 4. The other 3 shuttles should be in the vicinity as well." The Admiral's voice came back crisp with authority. "We're tracking all 4 shuttles now. Prepare for retrieval." "Something has happened." "Captain, something that changes everything." "What do you mean?" demanded Morgan. The Admiral paused for a moment before continuing. "We've received reports of simultaneous attacks on 3 other diplomatic outposts, both human and Zenturi. Someone is trying to start a war between our peoples." Kira and Alice exchanged looks of horror, the peace they had worked for suddenly hanging by the thinnest of threads. But who asked Alice who would want war between us? The Admiral's response was lost in a burst of static as something large appeared on their sensors, moving fast toward their position. Captain Morgan's hands flew over the controls. Evasive maneuvers, she shouted. Strap in tight. The shuttle lurched sharply as Morgan pushed the engines beyond their designed capacity. The mysterious object still gaining on them. They cleared the hangar just as a massive explosion rocked the alien ship, sending debris flying in all directions. Captain Morgan expertly navigated through the chaos, aiming for the nearest Zenturi cruiser admiral. Chen's voice came through there. Comms again, clearer this time. Captain Morgan, is that you? Yes, Admiral. The captain responded with 3 survivors requesting immediate pickup, and I strongly suggest a ceasefire against the alien vessel. We need to take prisoners, not corpses, if we want answers. Understood, a new voice responded, one that Kira recognized as Commander Lorna of the Zenturi fleet. All vessels cease fire targeting systems offline. The shuttle docked with the Zenturi cruiser, where they were met by a mixed team of human and Zenturi personnel, all looking confused but determined. How did you know to work together? Kira asked Commander Lorna, as medical staff examined them for injuries. The commander's tendrils rippled with amusement. We didn't at first, she admitted. We arrived ready to fight each other. But then both our sensor teams detected the same anomalous energy signature from that alien vessel, a signature that matched reports from all the attacked outposts. Admiral Chen nodded, joining them once we realized we had the same information. We decided to establish communications rather than immediately opening fire. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to talk before shooting. Alice smiled. Squeezing Kira's hand, 1 person or 3, she said softly as they moved to the command center to brief their superiors on what they had learned about the architects. Kira felt a renewed sense of hope. Perhaps their captors had been wrong. Perhaps the natural state of intelligent species wasn't conflict, but cooperation. They just needed the right circumstances to discover it. And if other architects were out there still manipulating, still believing in their theory of inevitable conflict, well, they would learn the same lesson, Kira thought, watching humans and Zenturi working side by side on the bridge. Sometimes the anomalies become the new normal. Here's part 3. 2 weeks after their escape from the architect's vessel, Kira found herself in an unfamiliar position, seated at a conference table on Earth, the first Zenturi to ever set foot on human soil. Outside the carefully controlled environment of diplomatic stations, she had been invited along with Alice and Captain Morgan to brief the United Earth Council on their encounter. The room was grand, with high ceilings and windows that revealed a skyline of towering structures, unlike the flowing organic architecture of Zenturi cities. Everything here seemed built of straight lines and sharp angles, yet there was beauty in it. A testament to human determination and vision. Representatives from 12 Earth nations sat around the massive table with Admiral Chen at the head. Opposite her, Kira could see the holographic projection of the Zenturi High Command, connected via quantum entanglement communications. They had insisted on being present for this historic meeting. The gravity on Earth was slightly stronger than Kira was accustomed to, making her feel heavy and sluggish, but she kept her posture straight, ignoring the discomfort, her ceremonial diplomatic armor gleaming under the artificial lights. Admiral Chen rose to address the assembly. I believe you've all reviewed the preliminary report, she began. We now have confirmation that the attacks on our outposts and the apparent aggression between our species was engineered by an advanced race calling themselves the Architects. Their motives appear to be preventing alliance between humans and Zenturi. A murmur ran through the assembled representatives, one woman raising her hand, Councillor Patel from the Indian Coalition. Do we know why these architects would want to prevent our alliance? Captain Morgan stepped forward to answer. The information we gathered suggests they've been manipulating species throughout the galaxy for millennia, possibly longer. She explained, they seem to believe that when different intelligent species unite, they eventually pose a threat to the architects' established order, and they may not be wrong. Alice added, her voice clear despite her obvious nervousness at addressing such distinguished company. A united human-Zenturi alliance would be stronger than either of us alone, especially given our complementary technologies and abilities. Kira nodded in agreement. Zenturi bioengineering combined with human artificial intelligence could advance both our species tremendously, she said, the holographic images of the Zenturi High Command shifting slightly in what she recognized as discomfort at discussing technological secrets so openly. The human counselors exchanged glances, clearly thinking the same thing about sharing their own advancements. Admiral Chen continued. According to our guest's account, these architects have been observing both our species for centuries. They consider conflict our natural state and cooperation an anomaly, and yet here we are cooperating, said a tall man at the far end of the table. Kira recognized him from briefings as Secretary General Okafor, the highest-ranking human official present. Indeed, Kira replied, their theory has a fundamental flaw. They underestimate the power of communication and shared interests. The Secretary General leaned forward. What do we know about their capabilities, their weaknesses? Very little. Captain Morgan admitted. The vessel we encountered demonstrated technology far beyond our current understanding, including energy manipulation that could disable our systems instantly from the holographic projection, Elder, Vax of the Zenturi. High Command spoke, his tendrils moving in patterns of deep concern. Our analysis of the debris recovered after the battle suggests materials unknown to our science and energy signatures that defy our current physics. The implications hung heavy in the air. Both species were outmatched technologically, but Alice raised her hand slightly, drawing attention. I've been analyzing the data we collected during our captivity, she said, and I found something interesting. The architects didn't try to kill us even when they could have easily done so. They seem bound by some code that prefers manipulation over direct intervention. That's consistent with our historical analysis. Counselor Patel noted, reviewing centuries of both human and Zenturi records, we've found patterns of unexplained conflicts, mysterious misunderstandings between our peoples that might have been orchestrated. Another counselor spoke up. So what's their endgame, to keep us fighting forever? Kira shook her head. I don't think so, she replied, her tendrils moving thoughtfully based on what we observed. I believe they want managed conflict, not annihilation, a galaxy of separated species who never reach their full potential by working together. And now that we know, Secretary General Okafor said slowly, we can guard against their manipulation. Elder Vax's hologram shifted closer to the table. That assumes they will allow us to maintain this knowledge. The tone of his voice made it clear he considered this. Unlikely. They have demonstrated the ability and willingness to attack our outposts. They may take more direct action now that we've exposed them. A heavy silence fell over the room. It was Alice who broke it, her voice stronger than before. Then we need to act first, she said. We need to form an alliance immediately, not just diplomatic but military, scientific, cultural, a true union that can stand against whatever the architects might attempt next. Kira felt a surge of pride for her human friend, seeing the same determination reflected in the faces of many around the table. The next several hours were filled with intense discussion, the framework of an alliance taking shape before her eyes, humans and Zenturi setting aside centuries of suspicion and competition in the face of a common threat. As the meeting broke for a recess, Kira stepped outside onto a balcony overlooking the city of New Geneva, breathing in the unfamiliar sense of Earth, its atmosphere richer in nitrogen than she was accustomed to, but not unpleasant. She sensed Alice's approach before hearing her. The unique emotional signature of her friend had become familiar to her tendrils, a complex mix of intelligence, curiosity, and kindness. It's beautiful, isn't it, Alice? Said, joining her at the railing, the sunset painting the sky in colors remarkably similar to the ceremonial displays on Zenturi. Prime. Kira nodded. I never expected to stand on Earth's soil, she admitted, watching the strange birds wheel through the darkening sky. Your world is both alien and familiar to me, Alice smiled. That's how I felt when I first joined the exchange program at Station Harmony. Frightened by the differences, excited by the similarities. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Alice spoke again. Do you think it will work, this alliance? Kira considered the question carefully. It must. She replied simply, we cannot afford to fail, not with the architects watching, waiting for us to prove their theory correct. A soft chime indicated the meeting was reconvening, and they returned to the conference room where the atmosphere had shifted subtly, determination replacing fear. Secretary General Okafor stood at the head of the table. We have drafted the preliminary alliance accord, he announced, with the agreement of the Zenturi High Command. This will unite our peoples in mutual defense and shared advancement while respecting our cultural differences. Kira watched as representatives from both species began to sign the document, a historic moment witnessed by only a few dozen individuals, but one that would change the course of two civilizations. Captain Morgan leaned closer to Kira and Alice. "They'll come for us now," she whispered. "You know that, don't you? The architects won't allow this alliance to stand unchallenged." Alice nodded grimly. "I've been thinking about that," she replied. "They seem so certain about their predictions about the natural order of things. People that confident don't change their minds easily." Kira felt her tendrils twist with concern. "You think they'll escalate beyond manipulation?" Morgan's expression was grave. "They'll have to." She said the subtle approach failed now. They'll try something more direct. The signing ceremony concluded with applause and formal statements. But Kira barely heard them, her mind racing with the implications of what they had done of the enemy they had revealed themselves to as the gathering began to disperse. Admiral Chen approached them. "The three of you should prepare," she said quietly. "We're forming a special joint task force to investigate the architects and develop countermeasures. I want you all on it." Kira stood straighter, accepting the assignment with a formal gesture of her people. "I would be honored," she replied. Morgan simply nodded while Alice looked surprised but determined. The Admiral continued. "You three have directly encountered these beings. You've seen their technology, experienced their thinking. We need that knowledge. But most importantly," Chen added, lowering her voice, "you've proven that humans and Zenturi can work together under extreme circumstances. You're living proof their theory is wrong, and that makes you our most valuable asset." They left the council chambers. Kira noticed a strange light in the evening sky, moving unlike any aircraft or satellite, too regular to be a meteor, too fast to be a star. She pointed it out to Alice, whose expression grew concerned. "We should report this," Alice said, reaching for her communicator. Before she could activate it, the light suddenly divided, becoming 2, then 4, then 16 perfect copies, multiplying exponentially, until the sky was filled with identical points of light, forming a pattern too precise to be natural. Around them, alarms began to sound throughout the city, emergency broadcasts activating on all channels. "This is not a drill," a calm automated voice announced. "Unidentified objects have entered Earth atmosphere. All citizens proceed to designated shelters immediately." "This is not a drill, Captain." Morgan looked up at the display, her face grim. "There it is," she said. The escalation. Kira felt a strange calm settle over her despite the chaos erupting around them. This was expected. The architects would not surrender their grand theory without a fight. Alice grabbed both their arms. "We need to get to command," she urged. "They'll need every piece of information we have about the architects' technology." As they rushed toward the military complex at the center of the city, Kira saw the first of the lights descend, touching down in the city park nearby. Not crash landing, but settling gently onto the grass. From the light emerged a figure identical to the architect they had encountered, tall, with shifting translucent skin and an elongated head. But this one was followed by others, dozens of them spreading out with purposeful movements. Humans ran screaming from the park, but the architects made no aggressive moves toward them. Instead, they simply stood watching, observing with their eyeless faces. Captain Morgan pulled them behind a barrier. "What are they doing?" she whispered. Kira extended her tendrils, trying to sense something, anything from the alien beings. But as before, there was only emptiness where emotions should be. Alice studied them through a small pair of binoculars. "I think they're waiting," she said for what Morgan demanded. As if in answer, the sky above them rippled the air itself, seeming to fold and distort as massive ships appeared where nothing had been moments before. Ships of Zenturi design bearing the insignia of the High Command. "But that's impossible," Kira gasped. "Those are our defense fleet vessels. They shouldn't be here. They couldn't have reached Earth so quickly." The Zenturi ships hovered above the city, weapons systems visibly activating, targeting human defense installations. Alice's communicator buzzed with an emergency transmission. Admiral Chen's voice, urgent and confused. "We're receiving transmissions from these Zenturi vessels claiming that humans have abducted their diplomatic representatives and they're here to rescue them." Morgan grabbed the communicator. "This is Captain Morgan," she responded sharply. That's a lie, Admiral. We're here voluntarily. It's the architects. They're creating this situation. But the transmission was already breaking up, interference flooding all communication channels. Kira watched in horror as human defense systems activated in response to the perceived Zenturi threat, energy weapons powering up missiles launching from silos outside the city. It's happening, she realized. The architects were forcing conflict, creating a situation where both sides would act on false information. The alliance barely formed, already being tested. What do we do? Alice asked, her voice small, against the growing sounds of impending battle. Kira looked between her human friends and the sky where her people's ships prepared to fire upon Earth, then at the architects standing motionless in the park, watching their theory of inevitable conflict, seemingly playing out exactly as they had predicted. We proved them wrong, she said, her voice finding strength. We stop this before it starts, no matter what it takes. Here's part 4. Kira, Alice, and Captain Morgan raced through the panicking crowds toward the Central Military Command Center. Morgan using her security clearance to push through checkpoints and barricades, the situation deteriorating around them with each passing minute. Emergency sirens wailed throughout the city, automated defense systems activating as the Zenturi vessels maintained their threatening position overhead. Civilians rushed toward shelters while military personnel hurried to battle stations, the fragile peace shattered by the architect's manipulation. We need to get a clear channel to both the Earth Council and the Zenturi High Command, Kira shouted over the noise. If we can explain what's happening, there's still a chance to prevent this. War. Alice nodded, frantically working on her tablet as they ran. The architects are jamming all standard frequencies, she explained, but I might be able to modify a quantum entanglement communicator to bypass the interference. They reached the command center, finding it in controlled chaos. Admiral Chen standing at the central holographic display, surrounded by officers tracking the positions of both human defenses and the Zenturi fleet. Admiral, Kira called out, pushing forward, we need to speak with you urgently. Chen turned, her face tense with the strain of impending conflict. I have less than 5 minutes before I must order our forces to engage. Those ships are powering weapons and refusing all communication. Captain Morgan stepped forward. They're not real Zenturi ships, Admiral. Or at least they're not acting under Zenturi authority. It's the architects creating this scenario. Chen's expression flickered between hope and doubt. We detected them entering our solar system through the outer defense grid. They have Zenturi identification signatures. Kira moved to the display, examining the ship configurations, her tendrils twitching as she recognized inconsistencies. Those signatures could be falsified, she said, pointing to subtle differences in the engine configurations that aren't standard Zenturi designs. They're close but wrong in key details. Alice joined them at the display, connecting her tablet to the command systems. She's right, Admiral. Look at the energy signatures. They match what we recorded from the architect's vessel. Chen hesitated, clearly weighing the evidence against the imminent threat overhead. If you're wrong, millions could die. If we're right, and you fire, millions will still die, Morgan countered. Because it will start a real war, not just this staged conflict. The Admiral made her decision quickly. Lieutenant, she ordered a nearby officer prepare a quantum frequency communication outside standard protocols. We need to contact the actual Zenturi High Command. The lieutenant moved to obey. But before he could reach the communications array, the building shook violently as something struck nearby. Status report, Chen demanded. Direct hit on our communications center. Came the reply, all quantum entanglement devices destroyed. Alice looked up from her tablet. We have another problem, she said, pointing to new data on the screen. The architects aren't just in the park anymore. They're spreading throughout the city, approaching key infrastructure. Outside the reinforced windows of the command center, they could see more of the strange lights descending, dozens of them, now hundreds, depositing identical architect beings throughout New Geneva. What are they doing? Asked a junior officer, their voice betraying fear. They're ensuring we can't communicate with each other. Kira realized aloud, they're isolating us, forcing both sides to act on incomplete information. Chen turned to them. Do you have any way to contact the real Zenturi authorities? Kira touched the ceremonial armor. She wore standard diplomatic protocol, includes an emergency beacon. She explained, designed to alert the nearest Zenturi vessel, but activating it in these circumstances might only add to the confusion. Unless Morgan interjected. unless we can modify. The signal to include a specific message. Alice was already connecting her tablet to Kira's armor. I can do that, she said, her fingers flying over the interface. But we need something the real Zenturi will recognize as authentic, something the architects couldn't know or replicate. Kira thought quickly, then removed a small ornament from her ceremonial sash. This is my family's ancestral code, she explained. It contains genetic markers unique to my bloodline. No copy would have this exact pattern. Alice integrated the ornament into her improvised communication device, while Kira composed a brief message explaining the situation in the most ancient form of Zenturi language, using cultural references and historical allusions that would be recognized by the High Command but meaningless to outsiders. As they worked the situation above, the city grew more tense, the false Zenturi ships beginning to deploy what appeared to be landing craft, while Earth defense systems tracked their movements, weapons locked but holding fire on Admiral Chen's direct order. We're ready, Alice announced. The modified beacon should transmit directly to any actual Zenturi vessels within 3 light years, and the message is encrypted with Kira's genetic markers. Kira activated the beacon, feeling it warm against her skin as it sent its desperate message into space. Now we wait. Morgan said, her voice tight, but waiting wasn't an option as the command center's sensors detected the first shots fired not from the ships above but from the ground human defense forces engaging with architects who had approached sensitive installations. They're forcing our hand, Chen said grimly, watching as the false Zenturi ships responded, immediately targeting the human defense positions that had opened fire. The Admiral turned to her officers. Prepare for full engagement, she ordered, her voice heavy with resignation. We can't let those ships reach ground level. No, Kira protested. We just need more time. But time had run out, as the first missiles launched from Earth's surface, streaking toward the Zenturi vessels, which returned fire. Immediately, energy weapons slicing through the clouds toward human cities. Alice grabbed Kira's arm. We need another option, she urged, something more immediate. Kira looked around the command center, her gaze landing on the central broadcast array designed to communicate with all Earth military forces simultaneously. Can that reach the ships? She asked, pointing. Theoretically, Chen replied. But they're ignoring all standard communications. Not the ships, Morgan said, following Kira's thinking. The architects on the ground, they must be coordinating this attack. Somehow, Alice understood immediately, connecting her tablet to the broadcast array. If we can disrupt their coordination even temporarily. She began programming rapidly, creating a signal based on the data they had collected from their encounter with the first architect, its unique energy signature reversed and amplified. This might interfere with their communication network, she explained, but I need more power than this system can generate. Admiral Chen considered for only a moment before giving the order, redirect power from the secondary defense grid to the broadcast array. But, ma'am, that will leave the southern continent exposed, an officer protested. We're already exposed, Chen replied grimly. Do it. The command center lights dimmed momentarily as power surged into the broadcast array, Alice's improvised signal launching outward in an expanding wave. On the monitors, they watched as the effect rippled across the city, the architects on the ground freezing in place, their fluid movements suddenly halting, the false Zenturi ships above, pausing in their attack patterns. It's working, Alice exclaimed. It's disrupting their coordination. But the effect was already fading, the architects beginning to move again, albeit more slowly, the ships resuming their attack vectors. We need something stronger, Kira said desperately. Before anyone could respond, a new alert sounded on the command systems, a massive energy signature appearing at the edge of the solar system. More architects. Morgan asked, her voice hollow. The officer at the sensor station shook his head. Unknown configuration, but the energy readings are off the scale. It's big, whatever it is. Kira felt Alice's hand find hers again, a silent promise. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Human and Zenturi united against a common threat. Here's part 2. The pursuing vessel loomed closer on the shuttle's sensors, its design unlike anything Kira had seen before. Neither human nor Zenturi in origin. The hull was dark, absorbing light, rather than reflecting it, making it difficult to discern its true shape and size. Captain Morgan pushed their small craft to its limits, the engines whining in protest as she executed a series of evasive maneuvers that tested the structural integrity of the shuttle and the stomachs of its passengers. Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the comm system again, static, distorting her words. Hang on, reinforcements are incoming, ETA 3 minutes. 3 minutes might as well be 3 hours, Kira thought as she watched the alien ship gaining on them with impossible speed. A beam of energy lanced out from the pursuer, narrowly missing their port side, the shuttle rocking violently from the near miss. They're toying with us, Alice said, her voice tight with fear. That kind of weapon could have destroyed us instantly if they wanted to. Kira nodded, her tendrils sensing the truth in Alice's words, whoever their attackers were. They wanted something more than simple destruction. Captain Morgan glanced back at them briefly before returning her attention to piloting. If they want us alive, then there's a chance we can negotiate. She said we need to buy time until the defense fleet arrives. As if responding to her words, the alien vessel suddenly accelerated, matching their speed perfectly and positioning itself directly above the shuttle. A faint blue light began to emanate from its underside, enveloping their craft. The shuttle's systems flickered, then died. Engines, communications, even life support. Captain Morgan frantically worked the controls, but nothing responded. We're caught in some kind of energy field, Alice said, examining the readings on her tablet. The only device still functioning, it's similar to theoretical tractor beam technology, but far more advanced. Kira felt the shuttle begin to move upward, being pulled inexorably toward the alien ship. She closed her eyes, reaching out with her tendrils, trying to sense anything about their captors. But there was nothing, just a strange emptiness where emotional impressions should be. The hull of the shuttle groaned as they passed through an opening in the larger vessel's underbelly, darkness enveloping them momentarily, before dim lights activated, revealing a vast hangar bay with surfaces made of an unfamiliar metallic substance that seemed to pulse with subtle patterns. With a soft thud, the shuttle came to rest on the hangar floor, the blue energy field dissipating, the shuttle systems immediately reactivating. Don't try to run the engines, Captain Morgan warned quietly. We don't know what kind of atmosphere is out there, or if there's any kind of containment field between us and vacuum. The three women sat in tense silence, waiting for some indication of what would happen next. Kira's tendrils twitched with anticipation, while Alice clutched her tablet to her chest. Like a shield, a seam appeared in the hangar wall, widening into a doorway through which stepped a figure that caused all three of them to gasp in surprise. It was bipedal like humans and Zenturi, but taller than either species, with skin that seemed to shift between translucent and solid, revealing glimpses of a complex internal structure. Unlike any biology Kira had studied, its head was elongated with no visible eyes, yet Kira felt certain it was observing them intently. Captain Morgan squared her shoulders and stood straighter. Representatives of Earth and the Zenturi Empire, she announced, her voice remarkably steady. I demand to know the meaning of this hostile action against our diplomatic outpost. The alien tilted its head slightly, a gesture almost familiar in its curiosity. A moment passed before a voice emanated, not from the creature but seemingly from the walls around them. We are the architects, a voice said, sounding like multiple voices speaking in perfect unison. Your conflict interests us. What conflict? Alice asked. We aren't in conflict. Our peoples are allies. The alien made a gesture with long, spindly fingers, and suddenly the hangar walls displayed images, scenes of battles between human and Zenturi vessels, reports of attacks and counterattacks, diplomatic outposts in flames. These events are occurring now, the voice explained, across 7 star systems. Your peoples destroy each other while accusing the other of betrayal. Kira felt her hearts racing with shock. That's impossible, she protested. I would know if my people were at war. My government would never. The architect moved closer, its movements fluid like water. We have observed your kind for centuries, humans and Zenturi alike, such predictable patterns of behavior. Give peace a chance. Then, at the first provocation, return to your natural state of conflict. That's not true, Alice insisted, stepping forward. Someone is manipulating events, trying to pit us against each other like they did with the station. The aliens seemed to consider this possibility, the translucency of its skin increasing until they could see the complex network of something like veins pulsing beneath. Perhaps. But does it matter? The outcome remains the same. Your governments have already issued declarations of war. Captain Morgan shook her head. There must be a way to stop this to show both sides they're being manipulated. The architect made another gesture, and the images changed, showing the Admiral Chen's fleet engaging with Centauri vessels near the remains of Station Harmony. The battle already begun. It is too late. The voice stated, "Your species have made their choices as they always do." Kira felt despair washing over her. Everything she had worked for, the friendship she had built with humans like Alice, all of it destroyed by unknown forces with unknown motives. "Then why bring us here?" Alice asked suddenly. "Why capture us if you believe war is inevitable?" For the first time, the alien seemed to hesitate, its fluid movement stilling. "Because you are anomalies," the voice finally replied. "Your cooperation, your friendship defies our predictions. It requires further study." Captain Morgan seized on this revelation. "So you admit our peoples can work together? That war isn't inevitable?" The architect moved to a control panel embedded in the wall. "Your isolated case is statistically insignificant. It countered. The larger pattern remains unchanged. But what if it isn't isolated?" Kira suggested, feeling a spark of hope. "What if there are others like us throughout both our civilizations who believe in peace?" The alien made no response, but Kira sensed she had struck a nerve. Alice stepped forward, her tablet extended, showing data she had been quietly gathering since their capture. "Look at these readings," she said. "The energy signature of this ship matches exactly the signature we detected before Station Harmony was attacked." Captain Morgan's eyes widened with realization. "You're not just observers, are you?" she accused. "You're the ones who attacked the station, who staged these incidents between our peoples." The architect moved with sudden speed, its form becoming almost entirely solid, its skin hardening into something resembling armor. "We are the architects," the voice stated more firmly. "We design the galaxy according to our understanding. Your species are flawed, unpredictable, dangerous when united. Your natural state is conflict, and we merely accelerate the inevitable." Kira felt anger rising within her. "You have no right," she said, advancing toward the alien, her tendrils fully extended in a threat display. "You play with our lives, our futures based on some theory about our nature." The architect retreated slightly, though whether from her anger or simple caution Kira couldn't tell. "We have observed for millennia," the voice insisted. "Whenever species like yours unite, they eventually challenge the established order of the galaxy, our order. So that's what this is about," Alice said, her voice filled with understanding. "You're afraid of what might happen if humans and Centauri work together." Before the alien could respond, the ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring throughout the hangar. "Captain." Morgan smiled grimly. "Looks like Admiral Chen found us." The architect moved to the control panel again, monitors showing a combined fleet of human and Centauri vessels surrounding their ship. "Impossible." The voice stated, "There should be no cooperation between your kinds." Kira laughed, a sound of genuine amusement. "Despite their dire situation, your theory has a flaw," she explained. "Communication. We talk to each other. We solve problems together. If our peoples received identical evidence of being manipulated, they would naturally compare notes." The ship rocked, again more violently, this time the architect's form fluctuating between solid and translucent. "With each impact, we need to get out of here," Captain Morgan said, heading back toward the shuttle. "If our people are attacking, they might not know we're aboard." Alice grabbed Kira's arm, pulling her toward the shuttle, but Kira hesitated, looking back at the alien, who now seemed smaller, somehow less imposing. "You've been wrong about us," she told the architect, "and you'll continue to be wrong as long as you see cooperation as an anomaly rather than a potential." The alien made no response. Its attention focused on the ship systems, but Kira thought she detected something like uncertainty in its stance. They boarded the shuttle quickly, Captain Morgan already bringing the engines online as Kira sealed the hatch behind them. "Hold on tight," the captain warned. "This won't be a smooth exit." The shuttle lifted off, shooting toward the still open hangar doors, beyond which they could see the combined human and Centauri fleet exchanging fire with the architect's vessel.